that it has been a long day and we are all eagerly looking forward to some downtime during the Christmas and the New Year's season. However, I hope that you will find this session to be relaxing, empowering, and informative, serving as a fantastic start to your personal development journey for 2024. Personally, I do have a strong feeling about 2024, and I think it will be a year of tremendous personal and professional growth. Before we delve into this important session led by Professor Roger Delves, I would like to take a moment to share a little bit about us, our beliefs, and our goals. So, Indigo Sails is dedicated to helping you discover your true and authentic self, as well as assisting you in overcoming any struggles that you might have. So, we would like you to think of us as your support community or as people that you can refer to at any point, no matter what you are facing, whether it's a need for an encouragement, support, motivation, or you might be struggling with something in your personal life or at work, please feel free to refer to us by email, by LinkedIn, however, whatever tool suits you. It is important to understand that we are all on different journeys in our life, and sometimes we resonate better with academical explanation, or we need a little bit of inspiration, or sometimes an insight from an occupational therapist might be much valuable. So that's why with Indigo, we have combined a team of professional facilitators who come from different backgrounds and have different skill set and the experiences in order to be able to assist you on any point of your journey, whether it's in your personal life or it's in your professional life. And we also do believe that life coaching and executive coaching basically do go hand by hand, because we do spend most of our life, well, not most of our life, but a good portion of our time at work. And it is important that we are able to be our authentic self in any environment. And as we know, in today's society and in this challenging environment, it is sometimes difficult, or it takes time to learn and to feel free to be your authentic self in different situations. So, our hope is that within our community, you will find a support system to address anything that you may hinder you from living your best life. So being content, being fulfilled, finding that inner peace, and being confident in your authentic self. That's actually our mission. That's our purpose. And we are hosting this webinar because we would like to encourage you to find that in us and to share some questions or dilemmas or even experiences, if you wish, about anything that might be preventing you from living your best life, or you are just currently in a stage of exploring it and you would appreciate a guidance, because that would help us as well then to format and adjust our webinars in the future, addressing those specific questions and being able to provide the results and the guidance that will be helpful to you. So additionally, Indigo Sails also organizes, we do sailing retreats, which combine personal development workshops while sailing on yachts in Croatia. So it's 7 nights, 8 days, but those 6 key milestones of the workshops are tailored towards the individuals in order to help them find their life purpose, to become more motivated, to keep a positive mindset, to communicate with compassion and kindness, etc. So it all depends what resonates with you. We have different tools, different people in our team of facilitators, so please feel free to share with us and guide us how we can help you better. I would also like to point out that this session is being recorded. So if someone doesn't like it or doesn't feel comfortable with it, please just switch off your camera or switch off your microphone, or you can raise your hand and we will make sure that we cut off that part in our video recording. Otherwise, we would encourage you to have your cameras up and running, to raise the questions, to ask the questions, and to just engage with us. And yeah, now let's talk love, right? So love has held various meanings throughout history, but what truly matters is what love means to you. I often personally hear stories about the desire to meet a soulmate or a twin flame, and the expectations that someone will fulfill certain criteria. So when I talk to people, it's mainly, or I wish they could, or I would like to find someone, or it really bothers me. So here in this session, Professor Roger Delps will address the beginning, or maybe we will work on that mindset of getting ready for love. Because what matters the most is that you find your true authentic self, that you are confident with, and that you are aware of, and that you know your values and your principles and your wants and needs, but also how to communicate them in a way that is overall bringing you to more content and fulfilled life. So, as said, Indigo Sails has multiple professional facilitators in our team, but like the living legend is Professor Roger Delps, who is a professor of authenticity in leadership. Besides many other things, he's also an author, speaker, and he's also an advisory board member of Indigo Sails. So I will hand over the stand to Professor Roger Delps, and he will guide you through this session step by step. There we go.
Thank you very much, Nico, and thank you all for joining us. There's just been a question asked of me in the chat about will we be sharing slides afterwards. We will be very happy to share slides with people afterwards. If you just let us know that you would like to have the slides by just saying something in the chat, then Isaac will send you a PDF copy of the slides that we're sharing, and that's very easy to organize. We're very happy to do that. So as we go through this evening, if you would like to have the slides for reference, just let us know in the chat, and Isaac, who's looking after me technically for the evening, will make sure that we send a copy to you. So I'm Roger. Nico introduced me briefly. I've been around for a long time. I've been working in business schools here in the UK for 25 years or more. I worked in international advertising before that. I worked in the UK, I worked in New York, and I worked in Dublin. I'm Anglo-Irish. I divide my time between the UK and Ireland. This area is an area that I've been working in for a long time. And I'm delighted tonight to talk about love in the context of personal relationships, more than in the context that I normally work with the concept, which is in the workplace. So one of the things I'd ask before we start is, I'm not going to be asking people to interact and to tell us and to share things with us. So it's not going to be interactive in that sense, but it is going to be interactive in the sense that I'd like you to share with each other through the chat any thoughts, any feelings you have as we go through the next hour or so. And that's easier to do for people if people have their cameras on. I'm not insisting, because that wouldn't be right, but if you can, I would encourage you to have your cameras on, because that does make it easier for people if they're going to be sharing things and sharing responses in the chat to what I'm talking about, if they can actually see the other people who are in this experience with them. So ideally for me, I would ask you to have your cameras on and to have your mics off, and then to share with each other as we go through what we're going to be talking about. Any thoughts you have, any feelings you have, any responses you have. And I'm very, very happy for you guys to be having a dialogue in chat as we go through what I'm going to be going through. Now, in the immortal words of today's online presenter, I'm now going to attempt to share my screen with you. And ideally, Isaac will tell me that I am now sharing the screen that says how we can get ready to love. Am I good to go, Isaac?
You are. You're good to go.
Oh, marvelous. So let's go on a little journey together, and let's see where this takes us. By all means, interrupt me and ask me questions as we go through. Very happy to do that. If you don't fancy trying to interrupt my almost constant chatter, you can do two things. You can either raise an electronic hand, and if I don't see it, Isaac will, and Isaac is well used to interrupting me, so that's no problem. Or you can put a question into the chat, and Isaac has his eye on the chat, and if he sees a question in the chat again, he will just stop my burbling and ask me to answer the question that's been popped into the chat. So, how we can get ready to love? You can all have your own view about the degree to which we need or we don't need love in our relationships, in our world. I know that I function much better if I feel that I am able to love and able to be loved. And when I think about love, and I think about the people whom I love and whom I think and I believe love me, I'm not in any way exclusively talking about love that involves a sexual relationship. In fact, the vast majority of my loving relationships don't. I'm talking about the love that I might have for close friends, for siblings, for parents, for relatives, for people whom I've shared life's experiences with, for people whom I work with very closely. I'm talking about a relationship that goes beyond just sharing common interests like professional backgrounds, and goes into something that's far deeper, far richer, far more rewarding. And lots of us, I think, wonder how we can't maintain those relationships or how we can't develop those relationships. What I'm trying to do today is talk about some of the central strands that are important in those relationships. And I'll talk about them and I'll identify 3 particular areas that I think are important and that Nico and I are going to talk about in 3 webinars that we're going to be running next year. So when I did that, my page was supposed to move down. So why doesn't that work?
If you click,
because it's a PDF, I have to do it differently. That's why. Yeah. One of the things I'd like to start with is this counterintuitive thing that I think a lot of people struggle with, which is we know that loving somebody is a selfless activity, but to be able to love somebody else, we must start with something that feels counterintuitive because it's not selfless. We have to first focus on ourselves. We have to be able to love. We have to be ready to love. And if we're not able to love, if we're not ready to love, if we're not open to love, then even when the potential to love or to be loved appears in front of us, we may well not be in a position to take advantage of it. So what do I mean by we must focus on ourselves? What do we have to focus on in order to be ready to love? Here's a question that Nico and I came up with, which we thought was quite an interesting question. How can we ask someone to love us? How can we expect someone to love us if we don't know who we are asking them to love? So if we want somebody to love us, we kind of need to know who we are. We need to know the person whom we are asking this other person to love, regardless of the nature of that loving relationship, whether it's the loving relationship of a friend or the loving relationship of a spouse or the loving relationship of a sibling. If we don't know who we are asking them to love, it can be very confusing for the person who is being asked to love us because they don't know who they are being asked to love. So what that means is that I need to know myself if I am going to be ready for loving relationships. And I think, and this is the 3 steps that I referred to a moment ago. If I am going to know myself, and these are not in any particular order, this isn't a linear thing, but the 3 things that I think are important to me to explore if I am to get myself in a position where I am ready to love and to be loved, I need to be self-aware, and I need to know who the authentic me is. And I'll go into a little bit more depth about that in a moment. I need to be okay with myself. And I'll go into a little bit more depth about that in a moment. And I need to know how to be socially aware. And I need to understand how to manage relationships. Now, those first two things are, the first thing is very much about looking inside myself, and maybe not just looking inside myself, but getting some outside feedback from other people about me. And the second thing is about being okay with the person that I am. But the third thing is much more outward looking. It's about understanding the sort of social person whom I want to be, and understanding how I need actively to participate in relationships, and how I can actively have agency in relationships, how I can do things to manage relationships, so that I am not somebody that relationships happen to. I am somebody who is a contributor to relationships. I am somebody who can help form relationships. I am somebody who can help direct the way relationships develop and the way relationships go, and the direction in which relationships take. So I have more agency in the relationships that take place in my life. And those three elements of self-knowledge will help me to be much better about how I approach relationships, how I feel about relationships, and how I behave within relationships. Now, the first of those that I talked about was self-awareness and acknowledging the authentic me. And you can say, well, people spend a lifetime trying to do this. And you're right. I'm not going to suggest that here is a single page questionnaire, and once you do that, you know yourself and you know the true you, and that's it, and it's all done and dusted. But I am going to suggest that there are some things that you can do that will give you a good start, a good basis for becoming more self-aware and exploring your own authenticity. Here is a very commonly used kind of slide that you see in presentations of this sort and in discussions of this sort. And it's fundamentally saying, of course, that what we see in other people and what other people see of us are our behaviors and actions. And when we stop and give thought to that for a moment, the behaviors and the actions that we see in other people and the behaviors and actions that other people see in us can be as a result of so many external pressures and external events and external requirements that they may bear very little relationship with our true selves. For example, very many of us behave in a way which is rewarded by the people who are close to us, by our family, or by the team we work with at work, or by the social group that we're in. And these rewarded behaviors, because they are rewarded, are behaviors that we are now very used to offering, to behaviors that we're very used to delivering. And they feel very comfortable to us. And of course, because they're rewarded, there's a degree of safety in behaving in that way, because we know that people want us and like us to behave in that way. So these behaviors and actions, even if they don't reflect who we are behaviors and actions that it's very easy for us to fall into the habit of repeating and repeating and repeating. And there are so many different people who reward us for behaving and acting in a certain way. The people we work with, the society we live in, the family unit that we work with, that we live within, and so on and so forth. So it may be that actually, when we're trying to build relationships with people, one of the things that hinders us is that we work at that behavior and action level, when actually, if we want to find out anything of any real importance about somebody else, or want them to find out anything of any real importance about us, we have to, as we know, get beneath the surface and ask about and think about and discover thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and values about the other person. Now, there's no rocket science about that. I'm sure you've heard all that before. But something I'd like to add to it, which might be a little new thought for you, is that is probably or almost certainly true of all of us, that we don't always get beneath the surface in relationships with people to explore the true person, the true other person. We are happy for relationships to bumble along at the behavior and actions level. Rewarded behavior meets rewarded behavior, rather than try to build the relationships that go below the surface. But one of the reasons why this may be the case, and one of the traps that we fall into ourselves, is that rather than this graphic that we're looking at being two people, if it's me looking in a mirror at me, one of the challenges that we all face in our busy, hectic lives is that we can lose touch with what's below the surface in ourselves. We can lose touch with our own thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and values, because actually all we do is offer behaviors and actions. Our lives are so full, so busy. There are so many demands on our time, so many demands on our energies, so many demands on us as individuals at the behavior and actions level, that we don't have time to give space to our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, and our values. And we become detached, or at least semi-detached, from these below the surface aspects of ourselves, which are truly important when it comes to staying in touch with who we really are. So it's tremendously important that we don't lose contact with what's beneath our own surface. And this is where self-awareness lies, beneath our own surface. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. So if we are to become self-aware, we need to keep going beneath the surface. We need to keep going into our thoughts, our beliefs, our values, our understanding, and challenging ourselves. But if we're going to challenge ourselves, what do we want to challenge ourselves against? Here's a definition of self-awareness. Self-aware people have a deep understanding of their own emotions, their own strengths, their own weaknesses, their own needs, and their own drives, and how these impact on other people. So that's one thing that we can challenge ourselves on when we go beneath the surface. Do we truly have a deep understanding of our own emotions? What do we want emotionally from ourselves, from other people? What do we want from the world around us? What's our purpose? What are our values? What are those things that constitute the red lines that will not be crossed? What are the things that we would die in a ditch for? Now, you know, many of us may have a very clear understanding that we have children and we would lay down in traffic for our children, and that's fine. And that's a formative sense of what's important to us in our lives. But do we know what our personal values are? Do we know what our strengths and weaknesses are? Do we acknowledge these things? This is not to be either overtly critical. We're not ripping ourselves to shreds in this self-awareness piece, nor are we being unrealistically hopeful. We are being objectively critical of who we are. So many of us have a sense of our best selves that's inside us. But do we often enough evaluate how we behave against the standard of this best self inside us? We probably don't. We probably don't reflect enough on any of this stuff. But if we could find the space to reflect, we would become more self-aware. If we are more self-aware, we become more confident. We have a more objective understanding of our own capabilities and our own limitations. And we begin to become more certain about where we are headed and why. And one of the ways in which we may become more certain is become more certain about what we want from relationships, from all the different sorts of relationships that we might engage in. When I'm coaching, one of the things that I find very, very frequently is that people are often very unsure about what they want from relationships, even as they begin to form relationships or go into relationships. They do so without really having a clear sense of what their expectations of friendships or loving relationships or loving friendships or professional relationships are. Self-confident people tend to be better at this. So self-awareness and the self-confidence that comes from this are useful things for people to have. Authenticity, look, authenticity, I understand, is one of these buzzwords that people throw around like mad. What is authenticity? Here is the definition that I like from Bernard Bass and Bruce Avolio, two very well-known academics who've written a great deal about and researched a great deal into authenticity. And what they say is authenticity is present when a behavior or a course of action is decided not by situational imperatives, but by reference to an examined template. So what that means is we are authentic when we make decisions which aren't just made in the moment based on what seems to be best at that time, but we make decisions based on a template that we've developed for ourselves, that we hold to be important, and that we use to help us make decisions. Now, that template, you can call it any one of the number of things, but self-awareness will certainly be part of that template. A sense of my values or my purpose or my faith or my principles will be a part of that template. And that template is my, what Bill George calls my North Star. It'll be that thing which acts as my moral compass. And that combination then of self-awareness and authenticity helps me to be a much more clearly defined individual. I know what I am and I know what I want. And that, for somebody in a loving relationship is a very much clearer, cleaner, stronger position to be in as one of two people in a relationship, because it's much clearer what you expect from a relationship, what you expect to give to a relationship. And a lot of the fog of ambiguity, which bedevils many a relationship, is blown away if you are self-aware and authentic. Authentic individuals are guided by explicit and conscious values that represent an examined, typically unchanging template. This is Bill George, who talks about True North. So what we're getting is this sense of an inner certainty, a kind of an imperative that is within me, that means that I am, the face I show to the world, to look at the graphic there, is the same as the face that I have beneath. There is no duplicity. There is no deceit. Who you see is who I am, because I am confident about me. And that, incidentally, is also a compellingly attractive thing that helps us to build more relationships, because people find that attractive and people want to find out more about somebody who presents themselves in this authentic way. Blake,
Roger.
yes. Yes, Blake. Yes, Blake. Your hand is raised. Would you like to say something? Blake, are you there?
I'm not sure if he realized that he raised his hand. Could be. Do you have a
maybe
question?
Blake doesn't realize he raised his hand. Okay. If you did intend to ask a question, Blake, then just jump in and interrupt me. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to look at is if you have ever experienced issues with any of the things on this page, then this next piece might help you. It's a piece of work. It's from a very long time ago, because it's called the OK Corral, and the OK Corral is reference to a very famous 1957 film, Gunfight at the OK Corral, starring these famous people in this photograph here, Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas, based on an episode from 1881 involving Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, and Johnny Ringo. Now, I don't know whether that rings any bells for anybody, but when this model was created in the early 1960s, the OK Corral was a very, very well-known kind of, it was a well-known film, and it was a well-known thing. So when Franklin Ernst created this model that I'm about to show you, called the OK Corral, it made perfect sense to everybody that it was called the OK Corral. Nowadays, nobody has a blind clue what the OK Corral is or was, and consequently, I have to do a little explanation at the front end. So here's my fun fact about the OK Corral, Gunfight at the OK Corral. It was the very last film that my very pregnant mum saw in 1957 before she was rushed to hospital to give birth to me. She saw Gunfight at the OK Corral in the evening, and she was rushed to hospital in the middle of the night, and she gave birth to me the next day. So there's something about that film that she really didn't like very much. So that's the fun fact about Gunfight at the OK Corral. The fun fact about the model is that it's lasted even longer than I have. This is the model. It's called the OK Corral, as I say, because it's in the shape of a square, and a corral is basically a horse car park. It's the horse car park at the edge of town, and the horse car park in Dodge City happened to be called the OK Car Park, or the OK Corral, because a corral is what a horse car park was called in America. So here we are. In this model, this model talks about how I feel about myself and how I feel about you. And it allows us to look at my feelings about myself and my feelings about you. So you'll see that there are three sets of the model that are in red and one that's in green. And that's because there is a healthy position in green where I am okay as far as I am concerned, and you are okay as far as I am concerned. So this is me looking at me and me looking at you all the time. So I'm okay as far as I'm concerned, and you're okay as far as I'm concerned. And this is a healthy position to be in relationships. If I'm in a relationship where I'm okay as far as I'm concerned, and you're okay as far as I'm concerned, we can make progress. It's a healthy relationship. But of course, not all relationships are like that. It is possible that we're in the bottom right-hand corner in a relationship where I am okay as far as I'm concerned. So by being okay, what I mean by that is I'm okay. So I think I'm reasonably well adjusted. I think that I'm reasonably presentable. I think that I am reasonably good company. I am somebody who is good to know. I'd be a good friend. I'd be a faithful friend. I am somebody who has got something to offer other people. I am reasonably intelligent. I am reasonably good at what I do. I am comfortable in my own skin. I know who I am. I know what I am, and I'm comfortable with that. So I have values that I'm happy with. I'm authentic, and what you see is what you get, and I'm happy with what you're seeing and what you're getting. And that's how you seem to me to be as well. So I am okay as far as I'm concerned, and you appear to me to be okay as far as I'm concerned as well. If I am okay, but you don't appear to be okay, then I will probably do one of two things. I will either feel one up on you, so I will feel that I can tell you what to do. You're not doing that right, let me show you. Or alternatively, I won't want you to be around me. And I'll say, no, look, I'm okay, and you're not okay as far as I'm concerned. So actually, I don't need you and I don't want you around me. And I might get quite angry with you. And I might reject you and push you away because I am okay and I don't want somebody around me who, as far as I'm concerned, is not okay. Over on the left-hand side, up in the top left-hand corner, I'm not okay. I don't feel happy about myself. I don't like things about myself. I don't find myself to be presentable or successful, or I don't think that I don't think I've got myself sorted out. I haven't got myself together. I'm not very organized. I certainly don't seem to be very successful in relationships. Whatever it might be, I'm not okay with me. But as far as I can see, you are okay. You have got yourself organized. You do seem to be somebody who's self-confident and self-aware and self-possessed and successful and attractive in terms of being somebody whom other people would like to have as a friend and all of these things. So I might feel one down to you. I might feel inferior to you. I might feel, I wish I could do these things as well as you do. And it might be that in feeling one down to you, I might push you away. And even if you try to befriend me and try to have a positive relationship with me, my sense of being in a one down position might still cause me to push you away. And some of us may have been in relationships where we've tried to be friendly with somebody who we can see doesn't feel great about themselves. And we've been rather surprised when our overtures of friendship have been pushed back in our face, rather. And this is because if I feel I am not okay with myself and I feel you are okay, then I am going to feel resentful, one down. I'm not sure I'm not sure that I'm worthy of a relationship with you. How's it going to be in a relationship with you because you're so much better than me, and so on and so forth. Of course, if you're in the bottom left-hand corner, I'm not okay as far as I'm concerned, and you're not okay either, we're in this terrible, hopeless position. And of course, oftentimes these relationships do flourish because we each tell the other one how dreadful we are. And they flourish in this kind of hopeless spiral where the relationship flourishes because each of us keeps on telling the other one how dreadful we are, and the other one can't help but agree and tell the other one how dreadful we are as well. And it's a very unhelpful position. Now, the point I want to make about this is there is only one helpful place to be relationally, and you can see where it is because it's written in green. And so the question that you have to say and ask of yourself is, are you genuinely okay with yourself? Because if you're not okay with yourself, having positive relationships with other people is going to be very, very challenging. If you are okay with yourself, having positive relationships with other people is going to be significantly less challenging. Now, when I go into this in more detail, I'll talk about things like how you become okay with yourself, how you move yourself around this quadrangle. I'll talk about what it is that causes us to form our predominant view about our okayness, which forms when we're very young. It forms in our preteen years. And it forms based on, we create a life script for ourselves based on life as we experience it as young people in the life that we have as young people, as preteens. And by the time we get into adulthood, these life scripts, which live in our mind in the form of tapes in our head, can tell us that we are okay or we're not okay about ourselves. And they can also lead us to have expectations about other people being okay or not okay. Now, we can move around this quadrangle, but we do have a default position. And it's, if we don't like the default position, unpacking it and discovering why it's our default position and changing it is important. It's not easy work, but it is work that we can do. And what we want to do is journey to that top right-hand corner. And when I talk about this in more detail in the webinars that we plan for 2024, I'll talk about how we do that and how we can get other people to help us do that. But when we think about the relationships that we're in that haven't worked, or the relationships that we're in that have worked, this is often a very durable way of looking at relationships and thinking to myself, if I am not okay with me, can I really form a relationship that works? Can I really create a stable, loving relationship with somebody else if I'm not okay with myself? Now, many of us go through life traumas which cause us to be not okay for periods of time. And if we reflect back on those periods of time and we think about what happened to our relationships, either our existing relationships or relationships we formed during that period of time, we can see the truth of this. When I think back over my own life over the last 10 years or so, I had a serious illness. And when I was in that period of being seriously ill, I was not okay with myself. And that had a very significant impact on my loving relationships. 2.5 years ago, I had a near fatal motorbike accident, and I was, again, very badly injured and took a long time to recover. And again, the relationships with people I loved very, very dearly suffered because for some considerable time, I was not okay with myself. Fundamentally, my life view is I am okay with myself. But those two very significant setbacks put me into a not okay box that I then had to get myself out of as I recovered from those two setbacks. If I hadn't done so, the relationship damage that I was seeing happening to me would only have got worse. So I do think that this works in real time. So this is something else that we'll look at. So those areas of self-awareness and authenticity and being okay are the kind of the inward-looking things that I think are important for us to think about in our relational lives. I think also we need to think about and look at social awareness and how we manage relationships. The wonderful Maya Angelou, who is of course so very quotable, but one of the quotes that is rightly attributed to her, but is often quoted, is this one: "People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel." And Maya Angelou, of course, the African-American activist who wrote, if you haven't read it, it's a brilliant book called "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings," talking about her years of activism. And what's so wonderful about this quote is, of course, the minute you read it, you understand that the experience of your own life tells you that this is true. You can still remember how people made you feel if, for example, somebody said something really cruel to you at school when you were 13, or somebody when you were young in the workplace said something that was utterly cutting and devastating when you were 23, or whatever it might be. And this is true. This is how we experience things. We'll never forget how somebody else made us feel. So, of course, it's also true that people don't forget how we made them feel. So thinking about how we make people feel is absolutely critical to understanding the nature and the quality of the relationships that we form. Do we make people feel great about themselves, great about us, great about the relationship that they're in with us? Because if we don't do that, why would we expect that relationship to be fruitful for us? And yet, in so many relationships, particularly long-lasting relationships, people seem to forget how important how we make our loved ones feel actually is on a daily basis. And this is about social awareness. Whether the loved one is your love partner, or whether it's your sibling, or whether it's your child, or whether it's your best friend, whatever the nature of the love, how you make the people whom you love feel is absolutely fundamental to what you get back from that relationship. But how many of us think about what we do to make the people we love feel great every day, let alone, well, I mean, how many of us do it every month or every week, but how many of us do it every day? What we don't do is this definition of social awareness, which comes from the emotional intelligence guru Daniel Goleman. Social awareness is being aware of social situations, means that you carefully consider and accurately assess people and situations to meet both your and their needs. So one of the things that we forget in our loving relationships is the mutuality that's there, and the need to meet the needs that the other person has. And we forget how those needs might differ, or how those needs might be, because that each individual we love not only has a loving relationship with us, but they also have a network of other relationships. So nobody in today's joined up world is in only one relationship. So what people need from us and from other people in their network of relationships has to be conjoined and has to interact. And if I love somebody, I need to know and take into account and consider and understand their social needs, not just within our relationship, but from other relationships that they are in as well. And selflessness relationally means actually being socially aware of all the other things that my love partner is involved in. So if it's a best friend of mine whom I have a really close loving relationship with, I do need to understand that however close our relationship is, that best friend of mine may be married or may be in another type of relationship elsewhere, which is also a loving relationship and which is also important. They may be involved in several of these other relationships because, as I said at the start, we love lots of different people simultaneously in different but equally important ways. So this social awareness is tremendously important. And when we're managing relationships in a socially aware way, some of the things that we need to be really good at doing is, and forgive me, there's a buzzword there, create psychological safety. What the hell does that mean? Well, fundamentally it means creating relationships within which people feel comfortable making mistakes. So people feel safe making mistakes. And if that psychological safety exists, if that safety to be wrong, that safety to make mistakes exists, then it's much easier to develop trust, for example. Now, trust in loving relationships is built up over time. And trust is built up when people are particularly good at being intimate with one another, i.e. they talk about what matters. They talk about hopes, fears, dreams, ambitions, values, purpose, what keeps them awake at night, and all those things. So they're good at that intimacy thing. They've also got to be reliable, and they've also got to be credible. You've got to believe in them. And all those things, reliability, credibility, intimacy, they build up the trust that we have in somebody else. But of course, we can lose our sense of trust in other people. And the biggest single thing that undermines trust is if I think that this person whom I trust, whom I love, is doing something which is selfish, which is self-orientated. Because if we're in a loving relationship and we trust each other, then selfishness or self-orientation will undermine that trust very significantly and very severely. And particularly if we're in what is supposed to be a one-to-one relationship, a loving relationship, a sexual relationship, then that insistence that love has that we are not self-orientated, we're not selfish, but we are selfless. We are committed to each other rather than to ourselves as an individual entity. That's really, really important. Now, in the webinars that we plan for next year, we'll look at several of these concepts, and we'll look at how do you develop trust? How do you avoid being self-orientated? How do you influence and persuade? How do you manage conflict? How do you motivate and inspire somebody else? But all of these things are designed to build relationships that are truly deep and meaningful. So those are the three areas that I said that I think are really important. If I'm going to get ready to love, I need to become self-aware, and I need to be sure about my authentic self. I need to become okay with myself and other people. And I need to develop social awareness and relationship management skills so that I can be aware of what each of these loving relationships requires of me and what I require of it, and how I can use relationship management skills to help the person in each loving relationship with me get what they want, and I get what I want from that relationship. That's what we'll build on as we continue to explore this in these sorts of webinars. And I wanted to leave some time at the end for questions, and yet at the same time respect the fact that everybody at this time of year is hugely busy. So I'm going to pause it there and say, let me stop sharing so I can see your faces, and ask you if there's anything that you'd like to pick me up on, pour scorn on, ask questions about, tell me stories to support what you, or to question what I'm saying, anything at all. Please just join in, unmute and say something, or if you want to be uber polite, you could put an electronic hand up.
Well, this was fantastic, Roger. And I mean, due to our frequent conversations and communication, I think it's like giving it.
I'm sorry, Cecilia, is that a question?
Cecilia, are you trying to break through and ask a question, or did you just leave your mic open?
It was an accidental unmute. So.
I think that was an accidental connection.
But I just wanted to say that I hope everyone got an insight into understanding how important it is for us to be okay with ourselves, and how our journeys do reflect on others, and how it's all interconnected, because love is such a massive subject in all of our lives. And it is important that we embark on that journey all together and grow together. So if I would like to know,
There's a question here from Gemma, which is an interesting one.
Question.
I'd like to know your opinion on the difference between being selfless and being people-pleasing. If I am a people-pleaser, I will do what other people want me to do, regardless of whether it's in my interests or not, because my fundamental driver is to please other people. Being selfless means, in a balanced, informed way, which is authentic and self-aware, when I am in a loving relationship, whatever the nature of that loving relationship is, I will be prepared to commit myself to that relationship in a way that does not put myself first. So selfless is about not putting myself first. Being a people pleaser is about always doing what other people want me to do. Now, you could accuse me of being of angels dancing on pinheads, but it's a real difference for me.
I think it's also tightly related to developing your authentic self. And I think we will be exploring as well in the future that balance between give and take, and exactly between, you know, understanding people pleasing versus being your authentic self and understanding boundaries percentages of compromising and compatibility in the end, right? But it's also related to trust that we will talk in our future webinars, because you want to develop the trust with people that you are giving your emotion to and giving your time to and giving your energy and having in your surrounding. So it is in my case, Roger, compared to you, it is a fine line, because I do find it to be related to being your authentic self in different environments, fostering a culture of love and care, more constructive.
Wes has got a question here, which says,
plenty more to come. There was another question from...
Yeah, Wes is saying, why in fostering a culture of love and care, how do we navigate situations where constructive confrontation is necessary for growth and understanding without compromising the essence of harmony and support?
Very good question.
Wes, 30 seconds is not enough to answer this question, but fundamentally, the core, the kernel of the response is, you try to navigate the situation by being collaborative rather than confrontational. And what that means in essence is confrontational approaches are competitive, they're win-lose. Collaborative approaches are collaborative, they're win-win. What's the difference between them? If I'm competitive, I am predominantly going to tell before I ask. If I'm collaborative, I'm predominantly going to ask before I tell. So if you think about these situations where there's constructive confrontation is necessary, fundamentally constructive confrontation is around advocacy and around inquiry. If you want the confrontation to be collaborative, inquire before you advocate. If you run the risk of it becoming more confrontational, advocate before you inquire, because that means you then state your position, which you then feel more inclined to defend. If you inquire first, you find out where the common ground is, which gives you more opportunity when you then respond to say, yes, well, I agree with you about this, and yes, I agree with you about that. So I'm not saying that that means that you'll take all of the steam out of all of the arguments, but I do think that that approach of being collaborative by inquiring before you advocate and not making things confrontational win-lose can be very helpful. And I hope that's a helpful answer for you.
Yeah, may I pitch in just quickly? I know that we are wrapping up. I think what helped me on my journey of building healthy relationships was also developing how I have developed my own self-awareness, but also that has helped me to develop awareness of others. So just bearing in mind that we are all on our own journeys and showing compassion and trying to communicate those differences from a place of kindness rather than argument will always bring more results. And it is maybe more challenging journey and it requires more energy, but it's well worth it, in my opinion. Sorry, there was
well said. I agree, Nika. What about if you feel okay with yourself, like who you are, and you put your authentic self out there, say to find love, and it still doesn't happen, even if you have this good self-awareness? Well, I think that you have to have trust in the process to some extent, Casabella. I've always felt that if I'm not saying that you are talking about finding love in terms of an interpersonal relationship, but let's say we are talking about it in that regard. The way what I suggest to people is, if you know who you are and you know who your authentic self is, think about the things that you love to do. It might be dog walking, it might be horse riding, it might be growing flowers, it might be home decor, but whatever it is, go to events, go to social gatherings, join groups where people do those things. Be your authentic self amongst people who do things that you are genuinely interested in, and you maximize your chance of finding somebody else who, at least to start with, shares a common interest, and you can go from there. So,
Roger, may I pitch in quickly as well?
yeah.
I think for me that is a massive question as well, because through my development and the relationship experiences, there is also something that I personally call a percentage, right? So we, on our journey of, and the journey of self, developing your authentic self is never ending. As we develop and as we grow, we are constantly challenged with changes and the way we see things. So it's an everlasting journey. But what I wanted to say is that there has to be a certain boundary as well. And we will be talking about compatibility and compromising in our next sessions, where, you know, what is an overpriced price to pay for compromising your authentic self, right? So it is important to find that balance in developing authentic relationships and keeping your authenticity as well. So, you know, like as we spoken earlier, trying to communicate the differences, etc. So it is always important also to bear in mind how much are you willing to compromise and how much you are willing to adjust your authentic self to other authentic self in order to find that ultimate match and content and the fulfillment.
There's a very famous fairy tale about the princess who befriended a frog and kissed the frog, who turned into a lovely, handsome prince who married her. In real life, sometimes you have to kiss a lot of frogs.
True. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining this webinar. We overran a little bit, and I know it's pretty late, but please feel free to engage with us. Send us an email, send us your questions, or share posts, like, and stay tuned for next webinar. We will be releasing the dates for the series of webinar on this, because it's such a complex subject, but I feel it's so important to all of us, because as we all know, we are most fulfilled when we can share it in love. You're very welcome. And we will see you on the other side.